So what do you do when the kids ask you if you can make a boat shelf for a new grandson's room? You say yes, of course. I drew up some sketches on Google SketchUp to several scales, but chose the middle one in the end. The first job was to use some recycled wood to make up the framework for the shelving. I began with the shelves, you'll see why in a moment. This is cutting the frame to various lengths. I successfully managed to put my elbow and arm in front of the camera here. And then I measured out for cutting up the ply I was using, just cutting it a bit oversize so that I could trim back to the size that I wanted afterwards. I started the glue up of the shelving. I didn't use any metal pins here because later on I need to do some resizing of these shelvings. So it was a case of glue up, put the framing pieces in place. This is the longest of three of the shelves, therefore I've got two middle supports as well. I mean, it's not critical exactly where they go, but anyway, I just thought I'd get them pretty much close to where they go anyway by measuring them up. In the case of, look, measure the diagonals, make sure that it's square, and then put glue around in the second piece on top of the shelving. This helps keep the weight down rather than using solid wood. It's only 3mm plywood. And here I just use timbers to make a sandwich clamp, clamping each end. And then off camera I jointed up one side of each of these three shelves and then just trimmed them off with the table saw, so at each of the shelves the same width in the end. And that also meant coming back and trimming off the end pieces as well. The measuring out here, or layout, is on the backing piece of ply. I put a centre line down it, marked off the positioning of the three shelves, one at the bottom, two in the middle, and the point on the bow. And then I marked the centre piece of each of the shelves, so that when I laid them out, I'd lined up the centre line and the centre of the shelves, and then marked the ends of the shelves, which would help me then with the laying out the curvature on the sides of these things. Here I just use some small blocks, bit of super glue, put them in place, bit of a point on the end, clamp up one end on the ends of the shelves, then just a bit of scrap ply put on there to mark out the curvature of the side. I simply did this on both sides to get that layout. The blocks could simply be broken off afterwards. Unfortunately, a little bit of tear out occurred. Just using a jigsaw, I cut the shapes out on these, just a little bit off the line I had marked. So that allowed me to come back with a block plane and just trip it back to that line. And naturally enough, just needed to sand then off the sharp edges. There'll be quite a bit of sanding, you'll see. Now, each of the shelves slightly overhang the bottom by design, and I marked the profile or where the curvature went on each of those shelves, transferred that along the complete length, and then I simply trimmed back to that line so that the shelving would match the curvature of that base. I then needed to mark out a notch on each of these shelves for the lower stringer that runs from front to back. So simply a case of use profile the same as the stringer to mark out the depth of it as well. I just used a scrap piece of the same material to ensure that I trimmed back and got the depth that I needed and kept what will be the side of the boat flush as well. I used just simply quick clamps here to hold each of the shelf units in place vertically and then attach the base simply using some staples. So it made it much easier to keep those upright. I pre-drilled and then screwed the stringers into each of the shelf units, starting on one end, working my way through to the other. Notice I've also got a piece up the nose here at the bow. That's simply cut to the profile of the base and held on while I put this stringer on, one on each side. And with both side stringers on, I simply put another screw up underneath to keep that front section of wood in place. That then allowed me to take a bit of scrap, line up the top of the shelves and mark the spot for cutting off the excess on that front piece. I then needed to mark notches for the stringers on the top, and I marked these so that there would be about a 15mm overhang above the shelves. I got things a little bit shaky here, not quite sure how I managed that. And back to putting the top stringers on here. Same method as the bottom, pre-drill, screw them in. And you can see a bit of the overhang there, so they're higher than the shelf unit themselves. Decided before I actually put sides on, I need to take the sharp edges off these stringers, and also on the flats of the shelving and the base as well, before I closed it up and didn't get really easy access. So I did the same on the other side when I got to that as well. Here I brad nailed a piece of scrap right from one end to the other over the top pieces, simply to keep all of them vertically in place while I attach the side stringers, and then cut the excess off the side stringers. I kept overhangs here and then just cut them back to size. Here I'm adding plenty of glue, ready for the side panel, and that was applied all the way along that length, of course. Again, putting this panel in place with some overhang on each end. I could trim that back later. You'll see the strap clamp there too, the ratchet clamp. I'll show you what I use that. I just put that around the bottom since I didn't have anything to grip there, and then used as many clamps as I could lay my hands on to glue up the top bit. I've used only glue so far at this point in time. I haven't used any other metal pieces. Now back to the block plane, just to clean up these edges. Make sure that the side panels are flush with the bottom. But you'll be able to see here that the ratchet clamp didn't work that well, about 60% effective, so I had to screw some of it as well. Easy enough to patch up afterwards. Now onto a gunnel strip which goes on the outside. Plenty of glue and as many clamps as I could lay my hand on to put it all together. There we go, here's a good view of my Aussie work boots, a classic in Australia. And back to sanding. Did I say I had to do sanding? Well, more and more of it. Time to cut off all the excess, make sure it's all flush and trim. Now I had to put again a piece on the back of this, so I used blocks clamped underneath the side gunnels to make sure the back piece stayed even and flush with the side pieces there. So again, glue, clamp, back to sanding. Okay. I slowed this down a bit. Don't you just love the sound of a sharp blade and plane running through the timber? It's just one of those joys of woodwork. Now I put beading on the front of the shelving here and cut to the profile. I also had trimmed down those gunnels so that they were flush with these beadings, made it a bit neater, and left a bit of a lip on the front of the shelf. Now here I put a foredeck on it. I marked the inside and the outside, and then when I cut the triangle to shape, I took a rabbit on off the inside so that it would fit neatly into that. Then took a spoke shave to it. Again, loved that sound of that. Just to take the major shape off the corner before I came back with a sander, just to smooth it out a bit. Now all staple holes and screw holes and everything have been filled here, so a lot of sanding needed just to bring them back to flush. And here's just a bead I'm putting under the top shelf so that it can be wall mounted through that. Now this shelving is going to be wall mounted. In WA, or Western Australia, walls tend to be brick and then rendered in mortar and plaster, so they're quite uneven. So by adding a strip at the bottom and the strip about 2/3 of the way up, that means they'll be the point of contact, yet they're thin enough that they shouldn't be seen when looking at the shelving mounted. But I'll glue and staple these down. I use some axle pegs just into holes in a piece of dowel to make a bollard for the foredeck. Very easy to do. And simply drill a hole and put it in. Decide to do a bit more dressing up of it, so you can see the anchor shape there on the right. A bit of double-sided tape, 2 pieces of ply. That's just 3mm ply, just enough to give them a bit of profile above the surface of the side. The process here you'll see in videos all over YouTube. Bit of glue, spray glue in this case. Put the anchor on top, glue it down, and then go across to the scroll saw and cut the shape out. By having the 2 pieces of ply together, of course, I'm ending up with 2 of these things, one for each side of the boat. And the sanding again, just using some sandpaper and also a small file on the curves, cleans them all up. My not favourite part, getting these things apart again. That double-sided tape's pretty strong. Here I use some super glue on the tips of this thing and just some Type-Bond 2 in between, because there's a little bit of curvature on the hull, and so the super glue tacks down pretty quickly and holds it in place while the Type-Bond 2 sets. The inevitable clean-up of the glue before we get on to a proper clean-up of everything as we get towards the end. I need to do some painting here, so I really needed to get rid of all that dust and mess. You see on the side there, I've added a name, Fry, to the boat. Well finished, and I must say I'm actually a little bit chuffed how it turned out. Especially once I'd put a few coats of paint on, did some blue highlighter, and did a bit of this on the side to make the anchor and the name pop out a little bit. So I hope you enjoyed the video and get something out of it. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. I put them out whenever I can. This was a longer project, took me longer to do, and so that's why there's been a bit of a delay between videos coming out. But take care, see you next time.